Oh, crap. Mm, there we go. Okay. I think I got rid of Audacity.
All right.
And we're back.
Turn my microphone up a little bit.
Yeah, I had you turned down while you were yelling, so I got to turn you back up.
Yeah, I was not happy.
Uh, you think?
Okay. Anyway, where were we? You were wanting to. I'll let you start things here.
All right. Yeah. What's going on? Um, so I think I'll just start with the yoga one. So I'd recently heard that a semi-distant relative of mine has some rather strong beliefs about yoga. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and has shared bits of information, not with me, but with the other family members that I've got
Mm-hmm.
who have gone to some yoga classes, and let them know that it's oh, what's the word? It's Hinduism or Buddhism or something, and definitely something to be afraid of. And so I went to Google and let's see. Yoga can be traced back some like 4 or 5 thousand years just in the written data. Uh, it I believe started in India. Well, no, it couldn't have been India. Well, let's see. I had a Google. I had a Google search hit, and it was from a site called allaboutspirituality.org. And this particular article is not. It's biased. It's biased, and
For or against?
against.
Okay.
It's like a Christian site. It says all about
Oh.
spiritual, so it's like a Christian site. Um, this doctrine is
Oh,
called. Hmm?
I've got Doctor Evil Christian.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, in my.
So let's see. This doctrine is called pantheism, which is the view that everything is God. In the Bible, God reveals himself as the personal creator of the universe. Since it is taught by the yogis that everything is God, it then stands to reason man is God. Christianity, on the other hand, teaches us that a very clear distinction between man and God, which, after listening to some of the more cerebral speakers like Paul Young and Jamie Englehart and our guy Keith Giles,
Yeah.
uh, and I'm beginning to see a little bit less of a difference, if you will. You know, since God created
Less of a
Adam and
difference with what?
between God and man, like less of a
Oh,
difference,
okay.
less of a distinction than the author of this article is trying to say that God is one thing and man is another.
Okay.
But the more I study the subject here, the more similar I'm seeing. Like I'm literally God's son. You know, my son out in the other room, yeah, he's a different person, but there is something of me in him.
Right.
And to say, oh, well, we're completely different, it kind of puts more of it puts more of the distinction on the difference rather than the similarities. And I think that's the mindset that's a little off. That's the mindset that I grew up in the evangelical church that I grew up in, and I don't think that's accurate anymore.
Do you think that part of that is when God is off somewhere distant where you can't reach him, then that creates an opportunity for other humans to say, "Well, I'm closer to God than you are.
Right, right. Because
I am so much better than you are because I don't, and I do. You know, I've got my lists. Got my
yeah,
list of stuff I don't do. I got my list of stuff I do, which most of it is do. You
And
know,
by the way, I was up at 4 o'clock this morning getting a hold of God in my prayer closet. I don't know about you, but
right?
I'm
Yeah.
definitely closer because of my sacrifices. Is yoga safe? Can the methods used in the yoga techniques be separated from the philosophy? The answer is a distinctive no, because
Oh,
yoga is
really?
considered to be a practice of psychosomatic exercise. There's no way to separate the two. I haven't actually read all this. I'm sort of skimming now because it's because we're in the moment here.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, it's fascinating to me that this is a thing. Like, because someone takes some exercise classes that talk about the fact that you cannot separate yourself from nature without cost, and by recognizing your place in this ecosystem, you can benefit your health. And some Christians are afraid of that. It's kind of funny to me. And
I
I
find
wrote
most
down,
Christians are afraid of just about
yeah,
everything.
yeah. I wrote down this thought: how mystical things turn into religious experience. Um, think about think about people that discovered like acupuncture.
Hmm.
And I had some other examples, but I can't think of them. Acupuncture is kind of a perfect one. Let's say you are using these needles, and there's a spot here on your forehead, and there's a spot on the top of your head, and if you activate those, you can stimulate your immune system. You can stimulate other parts of your body to behave certain way. You can stimulate religious experiences. It's kind of, I guess I'm just working backwards and thinking, you know, more primitive people, if they discover something new and it's mystical, um, how they would have interpreted that to be a religious experience, and they may have put faith in that, like worshiping it or something. It's not surprising, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, that people would come to that conclusion.
Yeah. I have only known a couple of people that were like, I mean, because the reality is, if you have 100 people that are going to yoga class, there's like somewhere between point 0.5 and 1.5 of them that are actually into the spiritual thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is just doing stretching exercises. That's just the reality, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
And there might be, let's just even say it was five of the 100 would actually start researching and looking into the spiritual stuff and the Buddhism, you know. And at that point, I'm like, okay, who cares? Um, but I I just have to go off my own experience in situations like this. And unfortunately, I have run into a lot more angry, rude, crass, ignorant, hateful, deceitful, greedy people that call themselves Christians
mm-hmm.
than I have of all these other faiths and these other spiritualities. Now that's, by the numbers, of course. Christians, it's my people. You know, that's what is it? Not my circus, not my monkeys. I'm sure if I was a part of, Muslim community or a Jewish community or a, Buddhist or whatever, they're going to have their own nutballs too. So by the numbers, obviously I'm going to encounter more
Yeah,
jackasses, because that's my people. But you know, maybe we kind of transition this into what we were talking about the other day about the groups and how
yeah,
the little collective.
yeah. So I watched the documentary day before yesterday, um, and it came across Twitter. One of the scientific sites I follow on Twitter said, headline read, "Man buys $20,000 device and proves flat Earth wrong, proves his theory wrong." So the documentary is called Behind the Curve, and it follows mostly Mark Sargent, who's in from my observation, he's a likable guy. He's a 40-year-old white guy. He wears a ball cap. He lives with his mom. Um, he's a nice dude.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, he was researching and came across the theory of flat Earth. And in his words, everything he studied pointed to it being flat. Like every piece of evidence he could find was like, oh wow, there's this huge conspiracy. The Earth is flat. It's not round. It's not a globe. We've been lied to, and the Illuminati, and just conspiracy after conspiracy. So it was a little over an hour. I watched it. They interviewed him. There were a handful of scientists, like geologists, physicists, even like some sociologists, like psychologists and people like that, that sort of weighed in their opinion on how this could happen. How is it that in the middle, a decade and a half into the 21st century, a handful of people, which now number in the thousands, can come to the conclusion that the Earth is not a globe after all, not a sphere, but is a flat disc. And if you go to like Antarctica, that's a wall around the entire disc, and that just by manipulating the maps and your compass, you can essentially travel from, I believe, from the continent of Africa to South America is one direction. You don't actually go east and west. You just go anyway. They've got a map. They've got a little disc. They've got mapped out. It's interesting. Supposedly there's no flights. There was flight patterns that they were looking at, and it just didn't make sense to them. Anyway, this guy, not Mark Sargent, this other guy went. He's like, well, if the Earth spins, 360 degrees in 24 hours, that's 15 degrees an hour. I'm going to get a gyroscope and I'm going to set it up. And well, it wouldn't stay running long enough. So he went and bought a $20,000 gyroscope, set the thing up, turned it on. And an hour later, it had tilted 15 degrees, the exact amount that it would have if it was spinning. And you know what he thought? Something else must be interfering with my gyroscope. I need to build something to protect it from whatever's interfering. And he spent hours and hours and money and still wouldn't believe. But anyway, the other takeaway that I got, it's a fascinating documentary, by the way. You should watch it. It's kind of cool.
But what's the conclusion?
Oh, they don't have a conclusion.
It's just about this batshit crazy guy with
him and a bunch of others.
Gyroscope.
No, he's the other one. He's a different guy. I mean, they're following him too. There's a woman. Some people like her. Some people hate her. There was another fella that wouldn't even come into the documentary unless they paid him thousands of dollars. He said that everybody else in the documentary was a CIA plant. I mean, it's crazy. But the big takeaway that I took was something that one of the sociologists said. And he was like, when you encounter someone that believes, like, for example, believes in a flat Earth, using shame and ridicule against them is the wrong way to engage with them. When they're approaching you with their idea, they're wanting to have a discussion and open dialogue. When you say, "Oh, I can't believe that anyone would believe the Earth is flat. How stupid do you have to be? You must be a moron." They retreat back into a corner, and it takes them that much farther to get back to the middle where you can actually have a discussion. And I just took that and applied it to everything else, because I know I've caught myself in conversations with people that essentially the way I'm lining up my questions and my points, it's going to end with, well, you must be a Nazi, or you must be um, a state worshiping um, zealot. You know, my strategy. I catch myself, my strategy being to insult them, to ridicule them, to get them to see just how hypocritical they really are. And that's not an effective way to influence someone. That was kind of my takeaway.
Okay. I
I mean, it's
when
fun.
yeah, right.
And I'm sure there's people that you could probably get away with doing that because you don't care. But
Well, when we first discussed this, one thing that I thought of is when you have these different groups of thought, and we can get drawn into groups of thought, because all the climate change people are together, and all the anti-vaccine and the pro-vaccine and the anti-abortion and the pro-abortion, and they end up in these clusters, because I don't think you would ever see, like, certain groups are naturally going to oppose themselves. I don't think you're going to see, like, you know anti-vaxxers line up with pro-abortion people, but maybe you do,
mm,
or you have these different. It's once you get locked into the group identity, well, then there are other groups. Well, okay, well, I
yeah,
can't be a part of them because of this other side issue, um, and so I have to be able to, you know, um, I should be able to think independently, and
mm-hmm,
that's really, really difficult to do, because so many of the people around me will are they're likely to cast me out
yeah,
if I show a certain viewpoint, and we see that among anarchists and
right,
volunteerists.
right,
Um, you know, someone will. You could, a lot of times it'll go on abortion.
yeah,
That's a good splitter. Um, if someone will begin to argue the merits of either abortion legislation or,
mm-hmm,
um, permissive, uh, and then I have to come back on, and I pretty much put everybody in one of two categories. You're either willing to use force, or you're not willing to use force to solve your problem, whatever it is.
yeah,
Um, and there are a lot of people that will be very, they may bump into me and see me say something like, "Well, hey, I don't believe in abortion prohibition, so I'm not for abortion laws." Oh, then we have community, because they're like, "Oh, that's so great. You're pro-choice." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I'm also pro-choice on, education and vaccination, and I'm pro choice of where I work and how much taxes I pay, and I'm pro-choice on all these other things." And then they're like, "Well, then that bumps into um some other core belief that they have, and then now we're in this big problem." And well, wait a minute, but you were on my side. I'm like, well, yeah, I was there for a minute, you know
uh-huh,
um but you begin to use the same force, and that's where we falls apart. You don't want force used for abortion, but you do want force used for climate change. You don't want force used for excluding gay marriage, um, but you want force used, to force somebody to bake a cake. And I'm like, just stop. The issue is force. The issue is not whether or not some knuckle dragging Neanderthal thinks doesn't like you.
Mm-hmm.
So what if they don't like you? There are lots of people that don't like me. The issue is when they are ready to use force. That's that to me is where I draw the line. And so I like having the conversation.
Yeah.
And like with vaccines, and I can say, well, obviously as an anarchist, I believe that there should be absolutely no restrictions whatsoever in the marketplace. If you want to bring a product to market, we'll bring it to market. And when I show up as the consumer and I say, "What do you have there?" Oh, well, here we have a vaccine, and this vaccine's gonna cure what ails you. And I go, "Oh, okay. Well, I get to look into that, and I get to decide whether or not I'm going to inject it in my body." The only time I have a problem with force is when you show up with a gun in one hand, and a syringe in the other, and say, "Here, come get your shot." No, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
That's not happening. I'm not. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it's I I have a theory. I had to turn my gain down a little bit because my kids just got home. They're making all kinds of racket. Um, but I've got a theory that I don't know is true. But the more I learn about these different groups, and the thought occurred to me while I was watching this documentary, it's like each group has a small number of people, and that's the only group they're in. But they're also in some of the people in that group align with another group, and that one triangulates with another group. You've
Mm-hmm.
got your anti-vaxxers, and you've got your Federal Reserve people that are worried about the Illuminati, and then Bilderbergers, and then you've got your flat Earth, and NASA, of course, and how they faked the moon landing. You know what I mean? There's bits and pieces of this and that, and the food, and they're making the frogs gay. It's like a um, I can't think of his name now. It's like an Alex Jones smorgasbord, right? But
Right.
I think the other distinction that you've put together is those that believe force is okay in certain cases, and those that don't believe force is okay in any case, other than aggression, obviously. And what's kind of occurred to me is I think a lot of people don't realize that is an option. And it's kind of fun to bring that up with people who are kind of diehard, like they've picked a team.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of fun with them, but ultimately it's futile. But what's really enjoyable is when you talk to someone that's really open minded, and they've not picked their team. They're not a super um, uber Republican, or conservative or Democrat. They're open minded, and you talk to them about force and the non-aggression principle, and they just kind of nod their head and they're like, "Well, yeah, who wouldn't believe that?" That's an enjoyable conversation.
Do you think
So,
it's fair to say that the open-minded people are the least likely to go vote?
well, right, because they're not diehard team members.
Yeah.
I still liken this to sports teams. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not really into sports, so maybe it's not really fair of me to complain about
Oh,
this. But I
it's
mean,
100% fair.
when I listen to someone talk about sports, I mean, I just, oh, what do you think about this team this year? Well, they got some good players, and what are the playoff, well, not playoffs, what do you call it, the draft, and this and that. And I'm just like, let me go take a nap. But I mean, they're serious about it, and they've got their rivalries, and they've got.
Oh
Hang on,
yeah.
somebody's banging on my door. Hold on. You've got your rivalries. Is it Auburn and University in Kentucky and Duke, obviously.
Oh yeah.
um, Alabama and whoever,
Auburn.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so when I hear people spouting stuff about their favorite politicians and their team, I just can't help but associate the two of them really really closely.
Yeah. Well, and the people that will um football, basketball, racing, whatever it is, once they have picked their team, and or it could be Ford versus Chevrolet. You know, I mean, I grew
Yeah,
up with a bunch of redneck guys that they would straight up tell you that if you were in the Ford or Chevrolet camp and you looked at someone driving the other one, you thought badly of them. They're just, well, oh my God, I can't believe that guy's driving a Chevrolet. You know what a, you know what an idiot. You know,
unless
and but it's it's prejudice. It's
yeah,
it's the most simple form of prejudice when you will literally judge a person to where you don't want to associate with them because they're the type of pickup truck they're. And God help you if they drove a Toyota. I mean,
oh
I mean those guys were just,
yeah,
you know, well they were gay. You know, you know. I mean, it was so stupid. But the, I mean, if we take a biblical view, I mean, we're built for community.
yeah, yeah,
And we're going to associate with people that we have a common bond with. And so, while there's obviously nothing wrong with having a uh, preferred automobile manufacturer or a preferred football team, it's when you're willing to execute force on someone just because they're on a different team than you.
yeah,
That's where the problem comes in. And so I, I'm seeing this problem, which it's not new; it's been around forever in trucking, where all these ignorant, unsatisfied, hateful, uh, just clueless, classless morons in my industry, and they're all mad as hell, and they're not going to take it anymore. Have any idea what they're mad about? Um, and so of course every problem that they face is somebody else's fault. It's never their own fault. They didn't have anything to do with it. And so they want the government to come in and regulate the industry to suit them. And I'm going, whoa, whoa, whoa,
hmm
whoa, whoa, tap, 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 tap. If you want to give away your liberty and your security and your freedom, well, go ahead. But you're not getting mine. You know,
hmm
and I have worked my ass off to get in the position that I'm in now and making more money than I've ever made in my life. And yet these morons are trying to, you know, I don't have the problems. I literally do not experience the problems that they do.
mm.
It doesn't happen. You know, oh, the agent lied to me and the broker screwed me and the customer did this and the customer, and it, dude, that stuff just doesn't happen to me,
Mm.
you know? And yet they're all wound up and they got their little group, and you know we're going to shut this country down, and we're going to get some respect. Okay, well, that didn't work out very well for Black Lives Matter. Y'all were all mad at them when they shut the road down, but now you can do it. Oh, because your cause is noble. Their cause wasn't noble, but yours is. And so you're going to use the same tactics that you cried and whined and complained about when they wanted to shut the road down and they wanted to have a protest in the street. Well, they were bigots, and they were troublemakers, and they were racist, and they were ignorant and uneducated, and all these bad things that you said about the Black Lives Matter folks when they were protesting. Uh, but now you're going to do it on us. Okay, you know, I see that shit don't fly. Sorry, it just
Right.
don't.
Yeah.
You know. Um, we got time for one more because I got one more I can use.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Cancel culture.
I don't know what. I don't think I've heard of that.
I don't remember who I've heard say it, but basically what the term cancel culture is used for is when, somebody tries to shut down Jordan Peterson or
Oh. Okay.
what's his name? The right wing guy, Ben Shapiro, or
Mm.
when it was Milo Yiannopoulos or
Hmm.
whoever it is. Oh, this person said Kevin Hart with the Oscars.
Oh yeah.
Kevin Hart
Yeah.
tweeted something 17 years ago or whatever, and now Kevin Hart's got to step down from the Oscars because he hasn't apologized enough times. And so, we're going to cancel him. Or we see it on Twitter, somebody says something, and like one guy one day was like a volunteer for the Red Cross, you know,
Mm.
and he said something that some Nazi didn't like, and they're like, they tag the Red Cross. Well, can you believe this is the type of person you have working for you? And the dude came out, he's like, I'm a volunteer. I work for free. I mean, what are you going to do?
Wow.
So I, um, I just experienced a form of this week where back in May, I looked it up. It was May 10th. I made a comment. I responded to a comment in a private group,
Hmm.
and the topic of conversation was the trucking market. 2018 was the biggest year ever. I mean, you could break all your legs and your toes and be in a coma and made a profit last year. I mean, it was just stupid. Well, now the reality has set in and things are back to normal, and it's driven the rates down. So we got too many trucks, not enough loads. Basic supply and demand. We have a situation where um, the carrier that I'm leased to, we have direct customers, and we also have third party freight, which means somebody else booked that freight with the customer. And so our agents will go out and book those loads. And so if they see a load on an outside board and they want to put one of us on it, well, at first they've got to post it on a private board to get my attention so that I'll be like, oh, hey, there's a load. And I'll call about it. And then they'll say, okay, well, hang on. Then they've got to pick up the phone and call the broker and say, I now have a truck available about this load. And they've posted it on what they think I'll haul it for. Now they've got to call negotiate to get it. Well, last year, dude, literally, I would call on a load, say it was $2,000, right? The number of times that the guy would call back, he's like, man, I got you 2,500 because it was just so
Oh wow.
stupid. It was
Uh-huh.
so crazy that they would call these brokers and just light them up. And
Hmm.
everybody was so desperate for trucks that you could just drive those rates up.
Wow.
And I know that happened at least 10 times last year, where I would call a guy and he'd be like, yeah, man, I got you 1,500, and I'm like, I was going to do it for 12.
Hmm.
Well, now I'm wanting to do it for 12 and they're wanting to pay 900,
Hmm.
you know? So when this guy comes back and he says, well, the broker says they'll only pay 900. And at that point, it's either take it or leave it. Well, I'll either do it for 900 or I won't do it at all. Well, we have these people at this company that don't understand basic communication and basic economics, and they want to try to turn this middleman person into an evil actor of some
Hmm.
sort. And really,
Yeah.
literally all they're doing is making a phone call.
Hmm.
They're trying to make a phone call to get you a load, but you're so ignorant um, and greedy that you don't care about even the person that's actually paying the bill, which is the customer that's going to load stuff on your trailer. So this guy's whining about it, and so I make this point in this comment section, and I say, listen, here's what's going to happen. the market is going to continue to decline because we have too many trucks and not enough loads, and it's going to continue to drive rates down. And the bottom feeders, the people that don't have any business being in this business right now, that either have too much debt, have not maintained their equipment well, have not done the hard work to secure relationships with brokers and agents and customers, those people, the ones that could fall over a log last summer and make a living, well, they're done. They're going to go out of business. They're going to fail. And when they do, that will correct the the thing, and we'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, how dare you call us all bottom feeders? And I'm like, dude, I wasn't talking about you. You called us all bottom feeders. And I said, I really didn't. I said that there are people that will fail. You want all of us to fail. And you called us all bottom feeders. And I'm like, okay, I'm done with. So he blocks me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. I'm blocked. I don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to burden. You don't have to carry the weight. You don't have to bear that cross anymore of me typing words on a computer that's going to hurt your feelings until Sunday. And on Sunday, my boss gets a text message
Mm.
from Captain Safety, and he asks, or do you do a training and mentoring fleet? Well, yes, we do. We train and mentor drivers, and that's that's our business model. Well, I'm just going to tell you, well, this Chris guy you got working for you, he's just says terrible things. These talk groups, and he he's just making you look bad. And of course, he doesn't realize who he's talking to, because Larry will tear your hide off of you faster than I will in a Facebook comment section. He has absolutely no qualms whatsoever. He will lay people open. I have a filter when it comes to, he doesn't. But basically what this guy did 5 months later, and I can't even imagine. He's had me blocked for I don't know how long.
Wow.
So I don't even know. Like, is he driving along 5 months later going, I bet he was like watching on YouTube and there was something about catfish and the word bottom feeder came up and he was like, I forgot. I've got to punish that guy. I've got to get that son of a bitch that said bottom feeder in a Facebook comment section, because he pushed buttons on a computer, on a phone screen. He pushed little buttons and he made words with his mouth and his breath and I'm like, y'all, who the hell cares? I mean,
well, I think we talked about this in another talk. When you're trying to silence somebody, you're 99.99% of the time you're in the wrong. When you're trying to get somebody else quiet or silenced.
What's really the point? I mean, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who I have great respect for, who's the leader of an organization. And he has a board, like a lot of, organizations like that do. And there are people on his board who I find personally repugnant. There are people on his board that hold views that I'm like, it makes my skin crawl at some of the stuff that I know that these people believe, yet they're in a leadership position at my friend's organization. And like, now I've joked with him about it. Like I've said, there's people on your board that I'm just like, but I would never, ever, ever, ever in a million years, one, tell him he's got to get a different board, because it's his. It's not mine. It don't belong to me. It doesn't have anything to do with me. But I can't, I mean, I can legitimately say that here are people that have views that are 180 degrees opposite of my own. My, most of my views on uh, faith are opposite of theirs. My views on politics and basic human civil rights are 180-degree opposite. And I guess while I could have a kind of fear-based reaction to their, but because I don't want their ideas to succeed, right? I mean, I can say that. I don't like their
Hmm.
views on immigration.
Yeah.
I don't like their views on foreign policy and war. And so obviously I don't want those ideas to proliferate. Is that the word? I don't want them to grow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm kind of looking around me going, yeah, but those ideas are dying anyway.
Hmm.
Maybe if that wasn't the case, maybe I would be a little more. But again, when I stepped into anarchy, I took force off the table. You know, I
Yeah.
it's not available to me anymore. Um, doesn't mean sometimes because listen, there's some people I'd like to lock up in a cage. Um, but it's just I don't know. One of my favorite CIA novel authors just dropped a new book yesterday.
Oh, that
Uh,
bad, huh?
I don't know. I don't know. Is it them or is it me? You know, um,
Hmm.
is it is it as I'm going because I'm going down the road and I'm listening to this book and I'm rolling my eyes and I'm
You've
going.
enjoyed all the older ones, all the older ones, and
I
you
have
like repeat those, so it
and
must
still
be
do, yeah,
him.
and still do. So it must be. I mean, it must be this guy's changed his style.
Yeah.
Um, but because it's but it okay. But here's the thing. But it art models life, right? And so everything. I mean, especially with Trump, everything is turned up to 10. You know, everything the tweets and the news and the oh what did he say today and he said this and all the Saudis and in their oil fields and all this stuff and it's like the art has to ramp up to this ludicrous level as well, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, so here you have a protagonist in this novel who has always been the the badass military guy that can never be killed, but he's the baddest guy on the planet, and he's just doing things that are so outside his character because of this desperation,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
and, and it's been so driven um, that I see people around me now
Mm.
that they're driven to the well, like that goofy, weird climate change girl, with
Oh yeah.
the angry face and um,
The girl screaming, you could barely understand her.
yeah, yeah, um, the victim of child abuse, as that's how I can't see her, but anything,
Mm-hmm.
but a victim of just horrible, terrible child abuse.
Maybe it's not the one I'm thinking of.
Well, it's
The one I'm
Greta.
thinking of is like a 20-year-old.
Yeah, well, this girl was like this was like yesterday or day before, and she
Oh, I haven't
sailed
seen it.
across the ocean to go to the UN and scream at
Oh,
everybody climate change, and it was the climate strike day,
no.
and so she's up there screaming at everybody, and she's angry and mad, and I think she's on like the autism spectrum. That's what everybody's saying,
Mm,
but you know, uh, either way, um, everybody's just driven to these extremes now, and like
right.
before, what was it a couple of years ago? You and I went back shockingly and looked at the Bush Gore debates from 2000,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and how just reasonable. They
Yeah.
were so reasonable.
Polarization, I think, is the word that I've been hearing get tossed around lately. It's like the polarization that's happening now is comparable to um, Nazi Germany, you know, Stalin's Russia. But I think more specifically, like the Nazis, like it's just getting so much farther apart between the two sides that there's no reconciling. There's no middle ground left.
Right. But isn't it fair to say that we look at them and I mean, they think they're so far apart, but I look at them and I'm like, you're right here. I mean, well, maybe you're that far apart.
Right, on the issues that count, the they are really close together. But the issues to them, like
Right.
they're nowhere near getting along,
Yeah.
which I guess some people might say is a good thing. But right, they
I'm I'm starting to see. I've seen these a couple of Facebook pages pop up. One's a coalition to close the camps. Is a Facebook page, and it has lots of information about the borders and these detention
okay,
centers. Okay,
yeah,
and another one is abolish ICE. Now the abolish ICE, I think, has a lot more libertarian kind of anarchist bent to it. But this close the concentration camps is straight up bleeding heart social justice warrior. Okay, but what's funny and or not funny, fascinating is to see what's happening in some of these comment sections because it has that very progressive feel to it, right? In how they frame the articles that they post and the comments that they post with them. And but in the comment sections, you have people that are going, okay, y'all, y'all realize this has been going on for a very long time, right? I mean,
hmm
this is not, you know, and so people are kind of awakening to. Wait a minute, you mean Barack Obama? And we're like, yeah, yeah,
uh-huh.
yeah, but Obama and Bush and Clinton and Bush and Reagan, oh, and Carter and Nixon and Ford, and I mean, just you can just keep rolling all the way back to about 1880. You know, um, so it's encouraging because people they're like, yes, what's happening on the border is wrong, right? Um,
hmm
and they're like, oh, it's Trump's fault. Yeah, yeah. But if Bush and Obama didn't build the car for him, he couldn't turn the key. You know, um,
uh-huh.
they're starting slowly to see how uh, long it takes. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
the this stuff wasn't possible from January 20th of 2017, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, okay. So for the day Trump took office till now, it wasn't possible to build all this infrastructure. That took years, decades even,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
build
that's a
the
good point.
infrastructure and put together the courts and put together the law. So I thought about this. So I came up with a little scenario in my head where, let's say you have a police officer, right, and they're enforcing some ordinance, some rule. Uh, it could be federal level, could be state, could be county, could be city, doesn't matter. And I'll say, well, yeah, um, well, obviously, I'm going to follow that law or whatever because you're the guy with the gun.
Mhm.
Now, if Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell walks right up to me right now and says, you will, well, I've got words that I'll be glad to use with Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump and, you know,
Mhm.
because they don't have the guns. You know,
Okay.
I,
Mhm.
I mean, who the hell cares what Barack Obama or Donald Trump says? Who
Hmm.
cares? The only reason What they say matters is because of the guys with the guns. So how
Okay.
about this? How about maybe we start holding the guys with the guns accountable, um, and say, you know what, listen, um, just doing my job is not good enough anymore. Sorry. You know, um, because they each provide a scapegoat for the other one. You know, the law enforcement agent, as they're, putting you in cuffs. Uh, well, hey, just doing my job. If you don't like the law, you got to change it with the politician. And then you go to the politician. Of course, if somebody gets lit up or shot or killed by a cop, well,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I mean, we just wrote the words down on paper. We didn't pull the trigger. It's not our fault. And I'm thinking, no, it's absolutely your fault, but it's all your fault. And so these people that are rightly outraged over the border situation and immigration, they're 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 right to be outraged, and they're right to be sad, and they're right to be concerned about this grave, gross violation of basic human rights and human dignity. But every border patrol agent is guilty. Every ICE agent is guilty. Every judge is guilty. Every prosecutor is guilty. They're just as guilty, or hell, more guilty than Donald Trump is.
Yeah.
Most,
Yeah.
because there's a whole lot of people that are running these detention centers that have been in that job a lot longer than Donald Trump's been president.
Yeah. That's a good point
Sorry,
too. Yeah.
y'all don't get a pass. Just doing my job. Well, you need a
Mm.
different fucking job. How about that?
Yeah.
You know, because my job, there's nobody gets enslaved in order for me to do my job. Nobody loses their rights. People only benefit from me doing my job. People only benefit from you doing your job. So they can go to the damn gas station and load their cars up with gasoline because you went and did your job.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to stop giving people a pass as individuals, you know, um, like TSA agents, you know, y'all
Mm-hmm.
get a different job, and so maybe they should be ostracized, you know, if you walk up to somebody, oh, hey, I work for the TSA. Oh, no thanks, man. I'm not associating with somebody that works for that organization.
Uh-huh.
Ostracize them. You know, you don't have to hurt them. You don't have to harm them, but you can kind of cast them out or cut them off and not have a relationship with them. There's nothing wrong with that. I certainly am not going to knowingly associate with someone that works for an organization like that, or border patrol, or because and I'm gonna call it evil, and I'm not gonna associate with evil people. So did I dig a hole deep enough on that one?
I think you did. I think you're almost to China. Incidentally, there's no point anywhere in the continental U.S. you can dig straight to China. It's not
Well,
possible.
that's good. Yeah, I
I
looked at
read
that
that on
website.
a
Yeah.
cap somewhere, bottle cap or something.
Well, they have a
Snapple.
web. There's a website somewhere where you can put your location. It'll show you on the other side of the globe
Oh, really?
where you come up. Yeah,
Huh. Interesting.
it only works if the Earth actually is a globe. If it's flat,
Oh,
I don't know what happens when you dig down all the way to the bottom. So
yeah. It's a sphere, and believe it or not, it's not completely round. It's wider left and right than it is up and down.
yeah,
The only reason I know that is because I was researching Mount Everest. I was watching some documentaries, and Mount Everest is the highest peak above sea level, but it's not the farthest point from the center of the Earth. I know your brain's starting to twist up just then. The center from the
oh,
center of the
because
Earth to
because okay, gotcha.
the globe, like a flat tire a little bit. It's squished. But anyway, well, good talk, man. I
Yeah.
got to get these rowdy kids in bed.
Yeah. I got to get this rowdy me in bed. So,
Yeah.
all right, man. That was a good one. I liked it.
All right.
All right. See.